I'm Rose Reynolds, 30, and 2 weeks before my sister's wedding, my parents told me something I'll never forget. You'll pay the $459,000 bill. It's your duty. When I refused, they didn't argue. They just said, then don't show your face again. So I didn't. Not until the night of the wedding, when the lights dimmed, the cameras flashed, and the groom's powerful family introduced their special guest, the woman who had saved their collapsing business. Me. What happened next shattered the image my parents had spent a lifetime building. The first time my mother called that week, I didn't answer. I knew the tone I'd hear before I even picked up, that mixture of forced sweetness and quiet manipulation she'd mastered long ago. But when she called the second time, and the third, I finally gave in, pressing the phone to my ear as the city outside my window glowed in the late evening haze. "Clara," she began, her voice cool and direct. "Your sister's wedding is in 2 weeks. You'll be covering the expenses, $459,000. That's your duty." There was no hesitation, no request, just an expectation, the same tone she'd used when asking me to pay off Dad's gambling debts, or to help with the down payment for their new house, or to fund Mia's last-minute study abroad trip. I'd done it all before, quietly, without complaint. This time, though, something in me cracked. Maybe it was the way she said duty as if love were a debt owed in installments. Maybe it was the number itself, $459,000, delivered with a casualness that made it sound like pocket change. "I'm not paying for that," I said evenly, almost gently. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was sharp, suffocating, like static. Then came her words, slow and venom-laced. "If you won't pay, don't show your face again." I could hear my father in the background, his voice rough and impatient. "She means it, Clara. Don't embarrass this family if you're not willing to support it." They hung up before I could respond. For a moment, I stood there in my apartment, the city lights reflecting off the glass, and felt something shift deep inside. Not anger, just clarity. For years, I'd been the quiet benefactor of their ambitions, the invisible backbone holding up a family that never once looked back to see who was carrying them. So I didn't call back. I didn't argue. I just let the silence stretch, and for the first time, it felt like peace. The day of the wedding arrived faster than expected. News traveled quickly, photos of my sister Mia's lavish preparations filled every corner of social media. Gold-trimmed invitations, designer gowns, the ballroom of the Grand Hill estate lit up like a royal gala. The caption under one of the posts read, "The union of two powerful families, a new legacy begins." I watched it all unfold from a distance. They didn't know I had already been invited, not by them, of course, but by someone who owed me far more than they realized. Months earlier, I'd worked as a financial consultant for a struggling manufacturing firm, a company on the verge of collapse after years of poor management and reckless spending. I'd rebuilt their financial model, saved their contracts, negotiated their debts. Within months, they were stable again, thriving even. The owner had been desperate, humble, and endlessly grateful. His name? Richard Dalton, the father of Mia's fiancé. I hadn't connected the dots at first. But when I saw his name printed in elegant script on the wedding announcement, I smiled. Life, it seemed, had a taste for irony. The night of the wedding shimmered with excess. Grand Hill's ballroom was a cathedral of wealth, chandeliers glinting like frozen rain, every guest polished to perfection. A full orchestra played soft classical pieces while waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests with rehearsed charm. Mom's dress was a glittering silver, her smile stretched too tight. Dad, ever the showman, boasted loudly about his daughter's achievements, meaning Mia, not me. I watched them from the balcony above, unseen for the moment, as they fluttered around like they owned the evening. Mia appeared soon after, glowing beneath layers of lace and silk. Her hand rested on her fiancé's arm, her laughter practiced but convincing. To anyone else, she looked like the picture of grace. To me, she looked like someone who'd learned to hide selfishness behind charm, a family talent. The ceremony began, the music swelling as the guests turned to watch. Everything unfolded like a scene written for applause. And then came the reception, the part where appearances mattered most. The master of ceremonies took the microphone, smiling with professional brightness. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have a very special guest. A person who, without their intervention, this union might not even have been possible. Someone who saved the Dalton family business from bankruptcy earlier this year. The crowd murmured with curiosity. My parents exchanged confused glances, and Mia's smile faltered. The MC continued, his voice carrying through the hall. Please welcome the Dalton family's honored guest, Ms. Rose Reynolds. Every head turned. Every sound in the room seemed to dissolve into stunned silence as I descended the staircase, the echo of my heels slicing through the tension. My mother's expression froze, disbelief first, then panic. My father's jaw locked tight, his hand gripping the edge of his glass. Mia blinked, her mouth parting as if she'd seen a ghost. Richard Dalton, tall, dignified, and unmistakably relieved to see me, crossed the room with open arms. He clasped my hands warmly, gratitude shining in his eyes. Clara, he said, his voice steady and sincere, it's an honor. We owe everything to you. Without your work, this company and this family wouldn't be here tonight. The words rippled through the crowd like electricity. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The laughter died. All eyes turned from the Daltons to my parents, their expressions tightening by the second. I smiled, small and measured, my voice soft but clear. I wasn't planning on showing my face, I said, looking directly at my mother, but it looks like I was invited after all. The air thickened with the kind of silence that can't be filled. My parents stood motionless, their pride unraveling strand by strand beneath the weight of every stare. Mia tried to recover her composure, but the flush in her cheeks betrayed her. I held my poise, every step deliberate as I joined Richard at the head table, the seat reserved for me marked by a small gold card. The irony was exquisite. The very people who had banished me from their lives now watched as the man they'd wanted to impress treated me as the evening's most distinguished guest. As the dinner resumed, I felt their eyes on me from across the room. My parents whispered to each other in sharp, panicked bursts. Mia tried to smile through her discomfort, but each time someone approached to congratulate me for my work, her expression faltered just a little more. The Daltons, on the other hand, were nothing but gracious. Richard's wife thanked me repeatedly, recounting how close they'd come to losing everything: the factories, the contracts, their employees. You didn't just save our company, she said quietly, you saved our family. Her sincerity contrasted so sharply with the hollow affection I'd grown up with that I almost didn't know how to respond. At one point, Mia approached the table, her voice brittle. You didn't tell us you knew the Daltons. You didn't ask, I replied calmly. She forced a laugh. Still, you could have mentioned it. I tilted my head, meeting her gaze. Would you have listened? Her expression wavered, caught between irritation and unease. You always did like surprises, she said finally, her tone meant to sound teasing, but landing somewhere closer to defensive. Only when they're earned, I replied, and her smile disappeared altogether. Later in the evening, as the orchestra played a slow piece, I excused myself from the table and stepped out onto the terrace. The air was cool, the city lights stretching far into the distance. For a brief moment, the noise of the ballroom faded, replaced by the quiet hum of night. Behind me, I heard footsteps, hesitant at first, then more deliberate. I turned to see my father approaching, his face pale beneath the soft glow of the terrace lights. Clara, he said gruffly, hands buried in his pockets. You didn't have to do this. Do what? I asked. Make us look foolish, he muttered. I studied him for a moment. You told me not to show my face. I didn't plan to until someone else decided I should. He looked away, his jaw tightening. You've always been stubborn. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just learned that silence only serves the people who benefit from it. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. When I walked back inside, the music had changed again, brighter now, though the room still carried the faint tension of what had happened. My mother stood near the bar, her smile mechanical, her posture rigid. She avoided my gaze. Richard found me once more before the evening ended. Clara, he said, offering his hand. I hope this isn't the last time our paths cross. You're the kind of person I'd trust with anything. I shook his hand, my voice quiet but certain. I'll hold you to that. The morning after the wedding felt like the quiet before a storm. The kind of quiet that hums beneath the surface, warning you that something is coming, not with noise, but with purpose. I woke to a dozen missed calls from my mother, 4 from my father, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled up the morning business reports. The Dalton family's company was trending again. News outlets had already caught wind of the anonymous consultant who had rescued them from financial collapse. Except now, my name wasn't anonymous anymore. Someone at the event had leaked a photo of me standing beside Richard Dalton, the caption reading, "The woman behind Dalton Industries' comeback revealed." By noon, my inbox overflowed with messages, investors, journalists, even former clients suddenly eager to reconnect. It was strange how quickly respect appeared once people realized who you really were. For years, I'd worked quietly, my accomplishments shadowed by louder personalities. Now, I was finally visible. The unknown number called again. This time, I answered. "Clara," a familiar voice said. "My mother." Her tone was calm, too calm. "We need to talk." "I don't think there's anything left to discuss," I replied. "Don't be dramatic. Yesterday was unexpected. You embarrassed us." I almost laughed. "You told me not to show my face." "I didn't, until someone else asked me to." She exhaled sharply. "You think this is about you? You turned a family celebration into a spectacle." "I didn't announce anything," I said evenly. "That wasn't my doing." "You could have left," she snapped. "I could have," I said. "But I didn't." Her silence stretched. Then she asked, quieter this time, "Are you happy now?" "I'm free," I said. "That's better than happy." She hung up without another word. By late afternoon, the story had spread beyond business pages. A local news channel ran a short segment about the mystery consultant whose family hadn't known about her success. The angle was almost cruel, a subtle contrast between my quiet independence and the flashy, performative wealth of my parents and sister. Mia must have seen it too, because her message came soon after. "We need to meet. Please." I didn't respond right away. I went for a walk through the city first, the air crisp with that early autumn sharpness that always made me feel alert. Everywhere I looked, there were pieces of other people's lives, laughter spilling from coffee shops, cars rushing past, strangers lost in their own stories. For once, mine didn't feel like an obligation. When I finally texted her back, I kept it short. 1 hour. The usual spot. The usual spot was a small diner near the river, the kind of place we'd gone to as teenagers when we wanted to escape our parents' endless lectures about appearances. I got there first and took the booth by the window. When Mia arrived, she looked different, tired, her makeup stripped away, her perfect composure cracked. She slid into the seat across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You could have told me." "Told you what?" "That you knew Dad's in-laws. That you were involved with their business." "Do you know how that made me look?" "You mean how it made me look?" I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "I think it's revealing." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You always had to prove something, didn't you? You couldn't just let me have my moment." "I didn't take anything from you," I said. "I earned what I have." "You just expected it handed to you." Her eyes flashed. "You sound just like Mom. Always so self-righteous." I laughed once, a short, sharp sound. "If I sounded like her, I'd be asking you for money." Her hand clenched around her cup. "They're furious, you know. You humiliated them." "They did that to themselves," I said, my tone steady. "They wanted to parade success. I just reminded them what it actually looks like." For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not anger this time, but something closer to doubt. Then it vanished, replaced by the familiar bitterness. "You think you're better than us?" "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending we're the same." She stood abruptly, leaving her half-empty drink behind. "You'll regret this, Clara. You've made enemies where you shouldn't have." I watched her walk out, her heels clicking against the tile, every step echoing the distance that had already grown between us. That evening, Richard Dalton called. "Clara, I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I said. "I wanted to thank you again and to ask if you'd consider joining our board as a permanent advisor. After last night, it's clear you're someone we can trust." His offer wasn't just flattering, it was strategic. Joining the Dalton board meant influence, visibility, and, more importantly, leverage. "I'll think about it," I told him. "But I appreciate the offer." He chuckled softly. "Something tells me you already know your answer." Maybe I did. After the call ended, I stared out at the skyline again, the same view I'd seen the night my parents disowned me. It looked different now, not brighter, just clearer. For years, I'd let their version of loyalty guide me, twisting obligation into love. Now, I saw it for what it was, control dressed as care. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "We need to talk urgent." The message was short and signed. "They're planning something. Be careful." No name, no details. I reread it twice. It could have been a prank or a warning. Either way, it stirred something in me. My parents weren't the type to admit defeat quietly. And if I'd learned anything about them, it was this: when pride is wounded, it doesn't retreat. It retaliates. 2 days later, I found out what the message meant. A journalist contacted me for a follow-up piece. At first, the questions were standard: my work, my background, my consulting experience. But then the tone shifted. He asked about allegations that I'd mishandled corporate funds at one of my previous firms. My stomach tightened. "That's false," I said. He shrugged over the phone. "Maybe, but someone's been feeding us documents. I thought you'd want to comment before we publish." I hung up, cold fury building beneath the calm. There was only one group of people who'd benefit from that kind of rumor, the same ones who'd lose everything if I kept gaining influence. I opened my laptop and started digging. Within hours, I traced the source of the leaked files, an encrypted account linked to an IP address in my hometown. My parents' home network. It wasn't just betrayal this time. It was war. That night, I drove back for the first time in months. The road stretched long and dark, headlights slicing through the quiet countryside. When I reached the house, the lights were on, just like always, perfection glowing through the windows, hiding rot beneath it. My father opened the door before I even knocked. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I could say the same," I replied, stepping past him. My mother stood by the fireplace, pretending to look surprised. "Clara, how nice of you to visit." I didn't waste time. "You sent those files." Her expression didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie," I said. "You tried to ruin me because you couldn't control me anymore." Dad crossed his arms. "You brought this on yourself. You humiliated us. Did you think we'd just watch while you dragged our name through the mud?" "Your name?" I said sharply. The only thing I dragged into the light was the truth. He stepped closer, voice low. "You forget who made you." I met his gaze, unblinking. "No, I remember exactly who you were. That's why I stopped letting you define me." For a moment, the air hung thick between us, pride on one side, resolve on the other. Then my mother's voice broke through, calm and cold. "You've made powerful enemies, Clara. The Daltons might think they owe you, but that won't last. You'll see." "Maybe," I said, turning toward the door. "But the difference between you and me is that I don't need anyone to own me. I earn it." I walked out before they could respond. The week before the Dalton board meeting, I barely slept. Every headline, every whisper about the leaked rumors, every email from people pretending to check in carried the same message underneath. Someone wanted to see me fall. But fear had long stopped controlling me. I wasn't the person who quietly funded other people's dreams anymore. I had learned to defend my own. The morning of the meeting, I dressed in black, sharp, clean lines, the kind of look that said I didn't need approval to belong in the room. When I arrived at the Dalton headquarters, the atmosphere was different. Calm, but charged. People nodded as I passed, recognition in their eyes. My name had become a conversation point, and not because of the scandal my parents tried to start. Richard Dalton was waiting outside the boardroom, his usual composure steady. "You've had an interesting week," he said. Seems that way, I replied. He lowered his voice. We looked into the claims. Every one of them was fabricated. Your former firm confirmed it. Let me guess, I said. The source traced back to my parents. He didn't answer, but his silence told me enough. I'm not surprised, I continued. They're consistent, if nothing else. Richard gave a short nod. I'll handle the public side. But if you'd prefer, I can make sure they never try something like this again. I shook my head. No, I'll handle it myself. Inside the boardroom, the air was crisp with the scent of polished wood and ambition. The meeting began with numbers, charts, and projections, but beneath it all was the unspoken acknowledgement that I had become a pivotal part of the company's turnaround. When Richard introduced me as their new financial director, the applause was quiet but genuine. It wasn't praise that mattered, it was confirmation. For years, I'd been the ghost in my family's shadow. Now I was standing in full light, and I didn't need them to see me to know I existed. After the meeting, I called Mia. She answered on the second ring, her tone guarded. What do you want? To end this, I said. Completely. She sighed. You made that clear when you walked out. No, I mean to end the cycle. The debts, the pretending, the constant game of who owes who. I'm done. There was a long pause. They're not going to stop, Clara, she said softly. You embarrassed them in front of everyone. They can't let it go. I know, I said. That's why I'm not waiting for them to. That night, I drove to the house again, but not for confrontation. I came with documents. Proof that the rumors they spread had been traced to their network. Evidence of manipulation and falsified records. I wanted closure, not revenge. When they opened the door, their expressions were a mix of resentment and fear. You can stop pretending you didn't do it, I said, setting the folder on the table. I have everything I need. You tried to destroy me. I could press charges. My father's voice cracked first. You wouldn't do that to your own family. I looked at him evenly. You already did. My mother's hands trembled, though her voice tried to stay calm. Why come here then? What do you want? To tell you that I'm done, I said. I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here so you understand something. You can't reach me anymore. Whatever control you thought you had, it's gone. She glared at me, but the fight behind her eyes was gone. My father slumped into the chair, the weight of pride finally too heavy to hold. You'll regret walking away from family, he muttered. No, I said. I regret wasting years trying to please one. I turned to leave, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the quiet hallway that had once felt like a prison. I didn't look back. Some goodbyes don't need words, they just need finality. The next morning, I handed the documents to a lawyer I trusted. Not to press charges, but to have them on record. I didn't need to destroy my parents. Life would do that on its own. Pride collapses under its own weight eventually. Later that week, the Dalton Company held a press conference announcing new expansions and partnerships. My role was officially public now. Cameras flashed, questions flew, and for once, I didn't shy away from attention. When the reporter asked how it felt to be the woman who saved a legacy, I smiled. I didn't save a legacy, I said. I built my own. The words spread quickly, quoted, shared, reposted. But what mattered most wasn't the attention, it was the freedom behind them. A few weeks later, Mia showed up at my office. She looked different, less polished, more human. Mom and Dad are selling the house, she said quietly. I figured they might. They're angry, she continued. But I think part of them knows they pushed you too far. I nodded. I don't hate them. I just don't trust them. She hesitated, then asked, Do you hate me? No, I said. I stopped competing with you a long time ago. Something in her expression softened. I didn't understand it then, she admitted. But I do now. You were never the one trying to hurt anyone. You were just trying to breathe. For the first time in years, we talked without bitterness. Not as sisters pretending to get along, but as two people finally done performing for an audience that no longer mattered. When she left, I knew we wouldn't suddenly become close, but maybe distance wasn't the same as hatred. Sometimes letting go is its own form of peace. Months passed. The company thrived. My name appeared on panels, business magazines, industry lists, but none of it mattered as much as the quiet mornings when I woke up knowing I owed nothing to anyone. One evening, while driving home, I passed the Grand Hill estate, the same place where my family had once smiled for photos they thought defined success. The lights were dim now, the garden silent. It struck me how quickly grandeur fades when it's built on appearances. I parked nearby for a moment, watching the darkened windows, remembering that night, the cold shock on their faces, the silence after my words. I didn't feel vengeance, just clarity. My parents had told me not to show my face again. And in a way, they were right. The face I had then, the one that needed their approval, was gone. What replaced it wasn't anger or pride. It was something quieter, stronger. Freedom. Months later, I received an invitation in the mail. My sister's anniversary celebration, small, private, nothing like the wedding had been. I almost threw it away. But then I noticed the handwritten note at the bottom. No expectations. Just family. I went. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because closure sometimes looks like showing up on your own terms. When I entered the room, my parents froze. They didn't speak. They didn't apologize either. But the difference this time was that I didn't need them to. Mia greeted me first. "You look good," she said, a hint of relief in her smile. "So do you," I replied. Dinner was quiet but civil. The air still carried unspoken history, but it no longer choked me. By the end of the evening, as I stood by the doorway ready to leave, my father finally spoke. "You did well, Clara." I looked at him, searching for sarcasm, but there was none. Just a man who finally saw what he'd tried to ignore. "Thank you," I said simply. Outside, the night was calm. No tension, no storm, just stillness. The kind that comes when everything finds its place. In the months that followed, life moved forward without spectacle. The Daltons continued to expand, my work grew, and the silence from my family stayed steady, but not cruel. It was distance with mutual understanding.